and Deputy Connolly is sharing with Deputies Harkin and
Fitzmaurice. 5 minutes. I want to thank Sinn Féin and particularly Deputy Function for using our private members' time to bring this motion, and I fully support it. And I want to say that in the last 11 years I've stood in 3 general elections, 2011, 2016 and 2020, and on 2 occasions I had the privilege of being successful. And I mention that because on each occasion, housing, public health, public transport and childcare, and I see Deputy Rabbit nodding, every meeting pre-election, childcare, and the astronomical costs. So this didn't happen overnight. Here we are in 2021 with another motion, and I very much welcome it. And so you have tabled an amendment, Minister, and I've stood here repeatedly and said, I know your heart is in the right place, and I know you set out the good things that you've done, but the fundamental change required is completely absent. So we have a piecemeal, profit-driven childcare system. And we've had many programmes, and of course I often think that we have democracy here by Primetime Investigates or other investigative programmes. And do you remember the programme about the childcare in Dublin? And we seem to have learned nothing. And in all of those elections, the constant theme for me was that the people were way ahead of us. They wanted honesty, they wanted action in relation to climate change, and they wanted coherent thinking that everything is interlinked. And of course, we can't have a thriving economy if we're underpaying the predominantly female workforce. It's simply not possible to have a thriving economy. It's thriving on the backs of abuse of those that are there. And of course, there's a role for the private market in everything. In housing, absolutely. But the state must be the primary mover, in my opinion. And I've reached this age and have had the privilege of working in different careers. And I actually despair sometimes, but I keep saying, I'm paid and I won't give into despair because I have a job here, as my colleagues have, to articulate a different vision and a different way of doing things. And it makes absolute sense to have a public childcare model. And so I'm disappointed that you haven't addressed that aspect. I don't expect you to change things overnight, but to actually commit to a public childcare model. Why? Because it's the best in the end. How do we know that? Well, let's look at what we do know. We know that the Citizens' Assembly on Gender Equality recommendations published on the 24th of April, and they asked us to move to a publicly funded, accessible and regulated model of childcare over the next decade. They didn't ask you to do it overnight. They pointed out, as all TDs have pointed out, the small amount of money that we're spending in relation to our GDP, and they're asking us to raise it up to 1%. Can you imagine? Just slowly raise it up. That's what they asked. And then we look at the successful countries. We look at Germany. The introduction of universal early childcare in Germany in 2013 was associated with a significant reduction in cases of child abuse and neglect, an increase in birth rates, an improvement in children's social and emotional development, an increase in maternal life satisfaction, and similarly the other Nordic countries. My own experience when I worked as a psychologist many years ago confirmed that if you have public access to childcare, it makes a phenomenal difference. All of the research has confirmed that, and here we are 3 elections later, and it's much longer for other TDs. In my case, 3 elections later, and we're still talking about public childcare. Now, it seems to me that that should be top of the list. I'm a university graduate myself, and I'm absolutely supportive of universities, but I would put childcare top of the list. That's what I would put top of the list. And the reason it hasn't happened, of course, is because it's dominated by the female gender, and we have never once put an emphasis or a value on women's work in this country. And I believe that we should build into that choice. And so I believe we should make it much easier for mothers or fathers to stay at home and mind their children. And I'm a radical feminist. I would describe myself as a radical feminist, but we must have choices for people, and within those choices we have to have public care as an essential ingredient. So we can come back again with another motion, and when it comes to our turn, we'll table another motion, and we'll keep tinkering, and you'll keep doing speeches that tells us about the money you're putting in, but ultimately you're supporting the private market, exactly like with housing. The exact same model, and until you change that model, we're not going to improve matters. Thank you to Sinn Féin.